Welcome back to SFA News Live right here from Moscone Center. So we're on Facebook Live, we're on YouTube. Also, all these interviews will wind up on Specialty Food Association's webpage as well. So if you miss one, don't worry about it. Check it out on Facebook, but also it'll be there as well. We're also being broadcast throughout all of Moscone Place. So wherever they are, they know what's going on. And with me is the guy who knows what's going on better than anyone else. In fact, it was a kickoff this morning, the first big educational session. David Donnan, senior partner from A.T. Kearney. So David, you talked a lot about generational differences. Give us the top line for those who might have missed it this morning.
Well, we're about to enter, as we all know about millennials, and think about millennials and how they're changing the culture of food and the culture of shopping. I also brought in that within the next 10 years, the next generation beyond millennials, which is Generation Z, which are even larger than millennials, the first digitally native cohort where they grew up on the internet, on mobile phones, on Facebook, on Instagram, and they are even going to shift things further. So, the next 10 years, we'll see even a bigger shift in consumer patterns, consumption, how we buy.
And what's unique about both these generations is they seem to have a passion for food, and not only in preparing food and taking pictures of food and wanting to know where their food comes from, but just about everything food for both of them. But there's very distinct differences as it relates to food. While most companies have been focused on millennials with food, I think what some people are saying is that opportunity, not just because of the size of the generation, but because of what they're eating, their move back to basics, Generation Z might have a lot more long-term impact.
Right, and the long-term impact is going to be a generation of much more experimentation, much more looking for new things, much more tolerant, much more inclusive, again, brought up with a much more focused community orientation. So things like local food movement will probably be even stronger with Generation Z.
And B corporations and all that.
Yeah, and so this quest for authenticity. So if you're a large company, it's around how do I regain that authenticity in my brand?
Or can you?
And that's what we're finding out. So we're seeing as, Campbell Soup buys up into organic brands, as General Mills and Kellogg and Tyson have their own venture capital groups. They're all striving to find how do we regain that lost authenticity that we had.
But we also have to be true to the mission of authenticity. Look at what happened with Kashi.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a perfect example. They were trying to keep it hidden of their ownership, then all of a sudden it comes out, blows up in their face.
But the alternate would be Ben & Jerry's with Unilever, where they kept it as a separate culture. And so that's going to be the dilemma for large food companies as they acquire some of these smaller startups, innovative companies. Can you absorb them? Obviously not. Can you run them separately? That's not efficient. So what's that in between? Right. And our belief is many of the companies, the large companies buying the smaller companies, are not so much buying product as they're buying culture and innovation. And so this culture and innovation change is really what they're trying to figure out, and how can that smaller company influence the larger company? And that's going to be a difficult road to go down, but one I think the large companies are really trying to figure out.
Well, look at Bolthouse with Campbell Soup.
Yes.
I mean, that's a perfect example of what everyone thought was probably going to work really well, hasn't.
Well, they ran out of carrots. I think that was one of the problems. So, yeah, I mean, supply chain issues come in because, I mean, if you look at the ramp up, Halo Top's another example.
Right.
Great when it started off, retailers, but then it kind of exploded and the supply chain failed. And so how do you ramp something up from, very small to medium to huge? And when you don't have the contract manufacturers, the distribution systems, the cold chain all in place, you can fall on your face very quickly. I think you see the same thing in QSR with McDonald's or Burger King when they launch a new product. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't because they're not able to get the same taste and consistency and quality across the whole system.
So let me throw out a different idea, that maybe this whole idea of small to medium to huge doesn't work anymore. That we don't have to have, every product in every supermarket, in every city in the country. And we can just have a lot of the companies that are here. These smaller companies have very good business and just be, small. They don't have to grow. And maybe it's not the American way, because what we keep on saying with business is you grow and whatever else. maybe Bolthouse Farms doesn't belong,
Right.
in every supermarket.
So we may be going back to much more of a regionally centric brand approach or more community centric brand. And I agree, because the idea of ramping up into a national and then an international brand that's consistent around the world, those days are hard to do. And particularly now when we have such influence from India and China into our culture as well, it may be an Indian brand that comes into the US or Canada. Right now in Canada, over 30% of the population in Toronto is from India and China as new immigrants. And so you look at what people eat in Toronto, it's now shifted from being what I would consider traditional British food to much more India, Chinese centric. And that the model has shifted around so that the small is influencing the large.
And again, the example that you gave is great, where, as we learn more about consumers and consumers' tastes, we can have just certain brands sold, and I hate to use the word because it's so overused, but curated, offerings at retail, and that could be a great business. So how do we get that message out there? That you don't have to be the next Kraft, you don't have to be the next Mondelez, you don't have to have these mega brands in order to have a nice successful company.
Well, it's interesting, just the presentation by the Hartman Group about an hour ago, they showed that the sales per percentage unit of market share and the profit is much higher with specialty food companies. And so you may not have the huge 34% share, you only have a 3% share, but each one of those share points is worth more than each share point of 34. So there's an opportunity to take niche markets and make them much more profitable. And so, that's still a good business model.
And you also take a look at shows like this, where with the Fancy Food Show, there's 1,600 exhibitors. I would say the majority of them are smaller companies.
Yes.
The aisles are packed. There's more supermarket buyers here, more food service buyers, chefs, and so on. And those other shows, similar to the FMI show, where for years, that's where everybody went, don't exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore.
Because they don't have the innovation. They don't have the passion behind the products.
I love coming to this show because it just gives me energy. I'm a mentor for startups in Chicago with the Hatchery and the 1871 Good Food Accelerator. And it's just the passion and the thinking. Now, not all of these ones will succeed. In fact, some of their products are pretty, not mainstream at all.
Right.
But I just love what they're doing. And the fact is, I'm seeing more and more people that have been displaced or left some of the large food companies starting their own food companies.
Yes.
And the number, it used to be, there'd be 10, 15, 20, 30 small companies that would be competing in a category. Now there's 200, 300, 400 in that same category. So if every one of them had 0.1 share, all of a sudden you've lost 30% of your share to small, little, tiny companies on a regional by regional basis. And that's hard to compete if you're a large national.
It is. So if you look in your crystal ball, and let's look not too far down the road, but 2 years down the road, what do you see?
So I see, again, there's going to be some real interesting innovations on new products coming out. I'm very bullish on certain technologies right now. HPP, high pressure pasteurization, gives you shelf stability without heat pasteurization, so it doesn't destroy the nutrients, and it doesn't require chemicals. So you have the same type of nutritional profile that a raw juice would have or a raw product would have, but shelf stability. So I like things that are going on there. I think packaging is coming into play. We're seeing a lot more product going to the perishable aisles, going to the perimeter of the grocery store, and they're starting to innovate on packaging. So now you can get fruit cups with raspberries and blueberries, that you can have a single serve, where before you had to buy the whole pint case, or you bought them in big party trays, or the party trays. Now they're coming down that they're actual consumable, grab and go. So I think packaging innovation, processing innovation, and then just unleashing the power of entrepreneurs is going to make the next 2 years very exciting.
Terrific. Well, David, thanks so much for joining us and keeping the industry on track with what's hot and what's not. So I'm Phil Lempert. What we're going to do is we're now going to head to the show floor, and then we're going to walk up and down with the camera, taste a whole bunch of new products, and then bring them back to you live. And also, don't forget, we still owe you a video that's coming up with new products that haven't hit the shelves yet. So stay tuned, keep it right here on Facebook Live and on YouTube, and we'll be right back.